Again, thank you for joining us, and I will now hand it over to Tribal Youth Resource Center Assistant Director, Tasha Fridia.
Thank you, Laura. As Kathleen mentioned, you are now in the Youth Voice panel session. I'll be your facilitator, and we are going to now move on to introductions. First slide, please. As Laura mentioned, my name is Tasha Fridia. I am the Assistant Director of the Tribal Youth Resource Center. I'm Wichita, Kiowa, and Caddo from Oklahoma. Today, I am joining you from South Dakota, the ancestral territory and the current territory of the Lakota people. I just want to welcome each of you to the conference and the session. Appreciate your presence and your intention here today, and ask for forgiveness from our elders, for myself, my young relatives that will be panelists for speaking in front of you, but we're really excited about this session and ready to share. So can we go to the next slide and we'll introduce, we'll open in a good way. One thing that, we all work with Indigenous youth, and that's why we're here. This is at the heart of the work that we do and the things that we are dedicated to. And this picture always speaks to me. It's a mother and a child, and really thinking about the work that we do, and a mother's love, a grandmother's love, an auntie's love. They bring us into the world, they nurture us, they guide us, and the way that they look at us when we're young children. And then the same can go for fathers as well. The way that we look at our children when they're first born or they first come into our lives, and really looking at them as the sacred beings that they are, and cherishing them, and just remembering that as they get older, they're still those precious beings, and to continue to nurture them. And that's what we all try to do in the work that we do. And then it also reminds me of our Lakota relatives, teaching us that our Buffalo relatives taught us that when there's danger in their herd, they surround the youth and protect the youth. And that's what we're all trying to do here in the work that we do, attending these types of trainings to better equip ourselves to help our youth with the challenges that they face. So now we'll go ahead and have introductions. We will start with Rory Wheeler. And Rory, if you could share where you're from, your age, and a passion of yours with everyone.
The Seneca language, I agree with you. I'm thankful you all are well. I'm really excited to be here today, calling in from the Sovereign Territory. My homeland's here in the Seneca Nation territory in New York. So I'm a citizen of the Seneca Nation, but I'm also a descendant of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation, as well as the Sandy Rock Sioux tribe. I'm 23 years old, and I've been involved in youth leadership development for the past few years, especially working with national organizations such as National Congress of American Indians, where I served on the Youth Commission for just over 4 years. With that learning, gaining firsthand knowledge from tribal leaders and fellow like-minded youth about ways we can work together in tackling some of the most pressing issues that impact our communities is one of my passions. And very honored and looking forward to this panel today.
Thank you, Rory, and welcome. We appreciate you sharing your voice with us. Next, we'll go to Devin Hernandez. Devin, if you could share with us where you're from, how old you are, and what's one of your passions.
Ihani washte, chante washte, cheese apisto. Lakotio hochikila imachiapi. Wasijua Devin Hernandez imachiapi. Taya wahi. I'm Devin Hernandez. I'm 16 years old, and I am a member of the Oglala Lakota tribe located on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. This is my first time ever doing something like this, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and I'm really excited. I've always wanted to be able to get my thoughts out, and do something like this. And so when I grow up, I wish to be a lawyer and work for ACLU.
Thank you, Devin. I'm excited that you're excited. I think everyone who's joining this panel is really interested in hearing what all of the youth have to say. So I'm excited that you're here as well. Next, we will go to Daryle Conquering Bear Crow. If you could share with us where you're from, your age, and a passion of yours.
Haini Washte, good morning. My name is Daryle Conquering Bear Crow, an enrolled member of the Gualasu tribe located on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Currently, I am on the homes of the Maloma and Chinook people in Portland, Oregon. And I use he, him pronouns, and I'm very passionate about Indian child welfare and our Two-Spirit young people that are in the foster care and juvenile detention facilities, and being able to create safe spaces for them. And as always, it's March Madness, so go Beavers.
I like it, Daryle. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think that's going to be a great perspective to share with everyone who's attending. Next, we'll go to Kennedy Friday. Kennedy, if you could share with us where you're from, how old you are, and what's a passion of yours.
Hihani washte, ashirishitsa, nati girigiri society, umpaya hipiwin the ditsiri. Wiku giriris, oigu garacho, detse. Good morning, how are you all? My name is Came to See from the Elk Woman, or Kennedy Friday. I'm Wishar from the Waco Band, Kiowa, and Caddo. I'm 14 years old, and I'm currently calling from Moore, Oklahoma, the ancestral territory of the Wichita people. A passion of mine is probably playing basketball and my education.
Thank you, Kennedy. We appreciate you being present today. And we will round this out with Rebekah. If you could tell us where you're from, how old you are, and what's a passion of yours.
Waka changachit winga lokvolga kuyana chaknuk. Hi, my name is Lokvolga, or Rebekah Sars, and I'm Yupik from Hooper Bay, and I'm living on Tlingit lands in Hoona, Alaska. So in Southeast Alaska, and one of my passions is learning more about Native environmental justice and bringing that forward and speaking it into the now. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining, Rebekah. We really appreciate you giving perspective from our Alaska Native relatives today. As you can see, we have tried to get a wide variety of geographic locations and interests with our youth to try to touch on what are facing our youth all over Indian country. So if we can go to the next slide. This is going to kind of be our pathway. Really, as you can tell, we want this to be an organic conversation. If we were together in person, we would be sitting on couches or chairs on the stage, just very relaxed, and give each of us an opportunity to pause and recenter our work on the youth and what the youth see as their strengths and challenges and needs. And so again, this is only a snapshot of Indian country. We did try to do our best, and I'm so excited that these youth have a ton to share with you, and there will be an opportunity for questions and answers later, but we're going to start with some selected topics. So we'll be discussing identity, community, and peers, and how those are impacting the lives of our youth today. Then we'll have interactive Q&A with the audience and youth discussion. And then the youth will come back at the end and make some recommendations for us as practitioners who serve them. And that really is our job, right? We're doing a service to them and for the future generations, the wellness of our communities and our tribes. So this is what our path will look like today. So it's just to give you a brief overview of where we're going and kind of how we'll get there. But we do encourage you to ask questions in the chat, but we will save those to the end with the Q&A so that the youth can fully express themselves. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll start with identity. When we're talking about identity, that can mean so many different things. We found, of course, in the work that we all do that a positive identity is a protective factor for our youth. And so really looking at that, let's talk, my young relatives, let's talk about, how do you identify as an Indigenous young person? And Rebekah, you're already on my screen, so let's go ahead and start with you. How do you identify as an Indigenous young person?
I identify as an Indigenous young person by speaking to my grandparents or my parents and asking more about who I am or who their parents were and what their families, what we did long ago, and it's important to know about where we come from, what part of the land we come from, because that's our base. And I identify as an Indigenous young person through the land.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think a lot of natives all over can really echo our connection to the lands that we come from. And it sounds like you've already kind of answered the second part of the question, is that your elders and your family and your grandparents have helped to shape that identity. Have you had any experiences that negatively impacted your identity? Where people may have discriminated against you because of your identity or your interest in your culture and things like that?
So I was born and raised in Texas, and I moved up north to Hooper Bay, my hometown, when I was about 14, and I didn't know really anything about myself. And so I have been reclaiming, and, at first it was like some family members liked it, some people didn't, but, I was out of my comfort zone, and I still took in everything, and I asked questions, and I understood, and I tried to understand everything as much as possible. But and that was, I was a little bit younger, and now I'm older. Now I'm 24. That was about 10 years ago. I feel like I've taken those perspectives, and they have shaped me to be who I am. And one of my uncles didn't like me coming up from Texas and asking about all of these questions about who we are, because I don't know, maybe he thought I would have taken the information and, I don't know, done something with it. But, I know now, like, he was protecting himself, and there have been people that have done things like that. And so that was a part of learning it too. I didn't know that all of these things, our people have gone through so much oppression, and it's awakening, and it's hard. And we as youth are able to speak on it today, and we are going to make a difference. And it's really nice and encouraging to know that other people, elders and people that care, and that gives us hope to know that you're all here. And I want to say that, we should be like on a stage. Well, I imagine us in there's a teepee on the screen, but we have like the Kuskig, the men's house, where we all gather, and the youth talk about issues that bother them, and the older people help take care of it, because we all have perspectives. And it's really awesome to know and to think that this is happening for us. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I really commend you for reclaiming your identity. And that's definitely difficult for people to do. I was fortunate enough to grow up with really strong identity, raised by my Indigenous grandmother, but I understand, that takes effort and commitment. And so I commend you for that. And I understand what you're talking about with your uncle. We have to be protective of our culture because of the history that we've experienced. So Rory, let's go to you. And I'll let you address any or all of the questions about identity that you'd like to address.
Oh yeah, I think I'll be able to hit on every one of those pieces. But yeah, so thinking about this question, this is one thing that comes back to me is just my beginnings growing up. Primarily under my grandparents' care. My mother was working and going to school full time when I was like under 5, so pre-kindergarten. So my grandparents really instilled in me the value in living off the land. We had a plentiful amount of food at our disposal, but they worked hard every day to provide for all of us, and not only us, but other members in our community, other elders, and those who needed it. And that living with one of our Haudenosaunee notions that, that we take what's there for us and what's left over is that we spread it out and really take care of one another. So I grew up knowing that, being immersed, and I was immersed in our Seneca language. And but then when I turned 5, I had to let my mom took me, well, we went and lived off territory about 45 minutes north of our reservation, kind of like an upper middle class type area where I really lost a lot of it. But I always knew that I wanted to go back someday. And finally that opportunity came to be when I, right before I started high school, was having a really hard time with, still adjusting to that type of lifestyle, because I knew where my heart was. My heart was wanting to be at home, wanted to be back with my family, with my community, with, I miss learning the language, miss farming, miss operating a tractor, which I think there is a photo of me. I was doing it, I think at age 4. So I don't know how, I don't know. Hope we don't have anyone from OSHA on the line or anything like that. But but it was a long time ago. But yeah, it's some really negative experiences. I went to basically an all-white middle school and elementary school where I think there was only like probably counting my hands the amount of non-white students that went to school with me. I remember sitting in a class and being chastised because I didn't know every single thing about Indigenous peoples. I think I was 11 or so. And so that was kind of the turning point where I said, well, I need to go back because these are, I really should know a lot of these things, but I don't. So made a decision to come back to the territory, and the rest has been history. I came back and still had those values that I was raised upon of being a good community member, being a good citizen, and always doing your part to give back. So I started volunteering in the community right when I moved back at age 12, got involved with our nation's volunteer fire department, to which I'm still active on, going on 11 years. Got involved with our elders programs, veterans programs, just about anybody that needed help, I was there, which that translated into the Seneca Nation government, where I was able, starting at age 14 or 15, I was able to work in all 3 branches of our government and really see the work that our nation does to try to help our nation's citizens. And I remember quite fondly, some of my best experiences was using our nation's government to improve people's lives, whether it was having housing issues, drug and alcohol prevention efforts, creating youth council, which, helped me, really gave me a voice and really let me see the brighter world out there. So I guess my identity is based on that. It's based on my community, based on those values of appreciating all that's around you, taking advantage of it, as well as doing your part and giving back to your fellow community members.
That is amazing. And, all of us, our communities are so important in our larger families, whether we're using kinship terms when we're addressing each other, but, really trying to be good relatives. We do that in the work that we do. And then when people are working with youth, I think that's important, right? To establish that sense of community. This isn't just a program we're running, this is a family, right? And we're all here for each other, and we're going to work together. And then we're going to have an extended family when we make agreements with other schools or other tribes, other municipalities, and in some cases courts, right? We're going to be a big family, and we're going to support youth. And I think when we start to look at things in the way that you were raised to look at, we can benefit youth in much greater ways. So I appreciate you sharing that, Rory. Next, let's go to Daryle. How has your identity been shaped as an Indigenous person? I know that you shared about ICWA and your experience with the child welfare system. So I'm imagining that your experience might have been a little different.
Yeah, I would like to put a disclaimer on this, that this is just an experience of mine, but thinking of those children that are going in the foster care system in the next hour, 45 children are, and of that many children, how many of them are Native children? And what are we going to do as individuals that are in this conference, in this session right now, really thinking about our children that are being placed in the foster care system? And so my experience and my identity, leaving Pine Ridge at a young age to the city was crazy, because I didn't know at a young age what was going on, and part of the Relocation Act, and Denver being one of the cities. And so being an urban res native really took away part of that language. And so also being placed in the foster care system, which is a whole nother conversation to have that we don't have time for right now. But to include my identity is I lost it. I lost everything who I was, being placed in foster care. And now that I'm an adult and in the field, I understand why prevention is needed and why prevention is key. For being a young adult right now and relearning the ways of how to properly bury a significant person, such as my mom, who I lost 12 months ago, and learning all those protocols and knowing if I'm doing the things right. And so when we say we need to keep our children safe, we need to keep them in the community, it's because of that reason. I shouldn't have to be asking questions and feeling embarrassed at the age that I am right now about burying a loved one. I have taken that grief and loss and anger and put it into, it may seem really like nonchalant to those that have grown up on the res and grown up within our Indian arts and crafts, but I've put it into something and I've learned how to bead. Like my identity now, like people that order stuff, when I bead, it's really like me identifying who I am, what I'm doing with my life. And when people get it and they're just amazed by the work and everything, that's my identity. Like I've learned from people and I've learned that it's okay to learn at the age that I'm at. Like I'm 30, I'm in my 30s. And so I'm okay with learning. I'm okay with being able to say those negative impacts that I've had is going to shape me for my future so that I can pass it on to my nieces and nephews or my kids when I have them. Also being in the care and also being in juvenile detention center care is that we tend to not appropriately identify young people. We put them as males and females, or we put them as straight. We don't put them as gay or two-spirit. But when a young person identifies as something, you need to learn how to respect that. And if you don't know that, you need to speak up. A true leader speaks up and say, well, I don't know how to appropriately engage this conversation if this person identifies as gay or two-spirit. Them, they pronouns, those are huge in the years that were coming up. I know that our elders and young other people didn't have that conversation with us or didn't know what it would be like because it's Western colonization wording. But we had two-spirit people in our communities, and what those people did for us was huge. And so overall, that is identifying me as an individual. I'm learning now that as I'm getting older that it's okay. Like if I didn't know that, I can relearn and I can make sure that the next 7 generations will be okay, whether they're in the foster care system, or in the juvenile detention center, so that because of conferences like this, and so that they can hear and take back our recommendations. So thank you.
Wow, thank you, Daryle. You brought tears to my eyes and a smile to my face. And, so sorry for your loss of your ina. And, I think you don't have anything to be ashamed or embarrassed of as far as where you are in learning. We're all on a journey and we're just at different spots. And I think, for my own children, I hope that they know way more, and they already do, than I did at their age. And so it's all a journey. So I appreciate everything that you shared. We'll go ahead and go to Kennedy now. And how do you identify as an Indigenous young person, and who or what has shaped your identity the most?
I think I identify through, my culture and my spirituality, sorry, which I've learned from you since you're my mom. And, you've kind of taught me everything I've ever known. And what's helped shape my identity is just, learning about my people, learning about my culture, learning why we do certain things, or certain people do this or certain people do that. It's just learning about tribes and people all around. It just helps me be a better person. And, it helps me feel not more native, because you can't feel more native, but, it makes me feel like I'm in my roots. And so, yeah. Negative experiences is probably because I probably don't look the most native. I'm African American and Native American. And so people might say, you don't look native, or you may not act native enough, but I know in my heart and my spirit that I'm native. That's my culture. That's everything that my life revolves around, is my spirituality, and, learning about my people and praying for my people, and, doing all the things that can help the people. Same people a lot. Shaping my identity is, just learning about my culture and learning about just everybody and everything that involves, being in my culture, like teepees or learning, going to teachings from my inas or going up to South Dakota to Sundance, all of that has shaped me to be the Native woman I am today.
I like it, Kenny. I like it. I think you bring up a really good point. And it's something, of course, that I hold dear to my heart as well, because it's been my life experience being African-American and Native American, but really identifying as an Indigenous woman and appreciating who I am as being African-American. But I grew up, as an Indigenous person, and that's who I am. And really encouraging adults to embrace the differences that we see in our communities, and it's come in all shapes, colors, and sizes. And like you said, in your heart and your spirit, and the Tinkashawas know who you are, and your ancestors know who you are. And so I think this is a unique area that adults working with Indigenous youth can really put some time, resources, and effort into learning about, just like Daryle was talking about with Two-Spirit youth. These are unique sets of Indigenous youth that have different needs, because what I found in my life, unfortunately, is that because of being mixed race, I've gotten, these negative experiences, not only from Indigenous people, but African-American people, and then European American people. So they're getting it from a whole bunch of different ways. And so how are we protecting our multiracial Indigenous youth? So I really appreciate you bringing that up. And thanks for telling everybody I taught you everything. So I'm just kidding. All right, Devin, we'll go to you now. How do you identify as an Indigenous young person, and kind of what has shaped your identity?
For me personally, identity has always been something that I have struggled with. I didn't grow up here on my reservation. I didn't grow up with my community. I grew up in, I guess you could say, the suburbs of Pueblo, Colorado, and I attended mostly white schools. So there was always that disconnection between my spirituality and just being a Native person. I guess you could say that, well, I moved here in like 4th grade, I think, sometime around middle school. But it wasn't until I transferred into my current school, Red Cloud, in 7th grade, I didn't even get to experience my culture until then. Because I feel like in my community, there is a really big disconnection between my elders and my youth for people who are coming in from other communities, but they're still Indigenous. And it's like they're really hesitant to speak and teach us about things because they're afraid of their culture being like washed away again and being lost. And so I'm still shaping my identity, but my community has really helped. Being closer with my peers has helped because they don't necessarily judge as much, and they're really open to teaching me about things, teaching me about my language, and yeah. Negative impacts. Well, of course, I went to predominantly white middle schools, so there's always that subtle racism. It was never upfront like, oh my god, you're Native. It was just like, hey, like really subtle, but it was there. One of the like, I guess, heaviest things I can think about is my music teacher in 3rd grade talking about Native American communities and how the government pays for everything that they do, and they get to go to college for free, and then they get their gas for free. And I said, hey, I'm Native American. And they're like, oh, well, you're going to school for free. When in reality, I was going to a public school, so I was going to school free. I was going to school free anyways. There was always that idea being like pushed on me that Native Americans are lazy or they're going extinct. I got asked if I could marry outside of my tribe or if I still lived in a teepee just at least 2 years ago. So there's disconnections everywhere between the outside world on the reservations and even inside the reservation.
Right. Thank you, Devin, for sharing all of that. I think that's really important. It's an interesting life experience. I too went to predominantly white schools a lot of my life, and so it's really interesting dynamic that exists there. I call it living in a bubble. Sometimes people live in a bubble, and people look like them, act like them, live like them, and they don't have to step out of their comfort zone. So I do think it makes you stronger. I think the other thing that you're speaking to that's helpful for all of us who are working with youth is really talking about self-esteem. All of those things that you're talking about that were negative experiences could have a negative impact on your self-esteem. So when we're building programs for youth, what are we doing to uplift them and create that strong sense of identity and self-esteem? And that sounds like ways that we can support youth and being proud of who we are, knowing what to say and when to step in, and having the confidence to assert ourselves as young people when we need to. So I really appreciate that. So let's go ahead and take a little pivot, and we'll go to the next slide. We'll talk about community. And I think what we'll do is we'll do 2 with the first 2 questions and 2 with the second, maybe, just because I want to make sure that we have enough time for audience questions as well. But let's go ahead and we will start with Kennedy. Let's talk about what your experience has been in your tribal community. And one thing I want to put over this is that when we're talking about tribal community, we can talk about like geographic, right? Is it rural? Is it reservation? Are you an urban Indian? Do you know, all of those things? But we have these other sub communities, right, within our youth. So is it your sports tribal community, your ceremonial tribal community? Is it your school, like Devin talked about? So it can be any of those aspects of community and what they mean to you. So what's your experience been in your tribal community, Kennedy?
I think I have kind of 2 tribal communities because, you know, I'm from Oklahoma and I'm Wichita, but I'm also Hunka Lakota, and I pray in Lakota. You know, that's my spirituality. And so I have 2 different kind of, you know, families or communities. You know, my community in Anadarko is like, I'm close with them, but it's just like kind of feel kind of out because, you know, I don't interact with them as much as I do as my community in South Dakota. And so it's still, I think they have the same issues, but it's different. It's kind of different. I don't know how to explain it. But you know, my strengths and my spirituality are in South Dakota. You know, that's where I feel at home. That's where my family is. You know, that's where I pray. That's where I feel at home. That's my place. And so, you know, that's I love it there. I love it. I love it. I love it, you know. And that's where I feel my happiest, you know. That's where I can share, you know, questions or anything that I need. That's my home. And so I think my community in Anadarko is just, I also have family down there, you know, I have relatives and stuff. It's just as good, you know. I may not practice the same, you know, religions as some of them because some of them go to like church and stuff like that, but it's still a good community and I still love it. And it's still helpful to their native kids. You know, they provide programs for their kids down there, you know, whether that's in basketball or learning or anything, you know. And the same with South Dakota, you know, they provide programs for their kids, you know, learning, basketball, sports, whatever. So I enjoy my tribal community everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Kennedy. And South Dakota is my place too, so I got you, girl. And let's see, let's go to Daryle and then talk about your community.
Yeah, so I was hoping to talk about the greatest challenges within the community that we do have.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, with the ever-changing atmosphere that we're in, is being able to changing the language and adding Two-Spirit or whatever that word is into your programming, flyers, brochures, so that youth can feel welcomed. I know that when I talked to a national organization and they wanted Native Americans to be part of that, I first asked them, where do you identify Native Americans or identify the word for LGBTQ? And so they're always leaving the 2S out. And so to be able to have safe spaces and having our young people trust and build those relationships, just changing the language and adding 2S or two-spirit or whatever that may be is, and pronouns and gender neutralization are huge right now. We know that many Native youth that identify as LGBTQ or two-spirit are going through a crisis of suicide, or going through epidemics right now of opioids. And how do we make sure our spaces are safe? And finally, for our Indian child welfare kids that are out there, we have programs that are ever changing, policies that are changing. We're making choices for our young people out there that we think are helping them. Why don't we invite those young people, those young adults into the conversations, into the table, and have them included in the circle? All our decisions are made without us, with sitting and looking at big people making choices. And so if you really want good program changes and you really want to know what's going on with your programs and what's not working, invite the young people, invite these youth. We have young people that are going to be out there that are wanting to be able to share their voice. It's just a simple, hey, come on, we want to hear from you. If we're going to be changing policies and procedures, we want to know what's best going to work for the program in the next 7 years. And so those challenges in my community are hard to take, because we have top people that are EDs, that are elders in our communities, and they don't want to, we know in our Native customs and our values that we value them, their knowledge. But at some point, the good ones, the good leaders will talk to the youth, bring them, and really have change, and not just to check box it off of a checklist saying, oh, we just did this, we heard their voice. But really, we want to see Indian Nation change for the better. And so being able to provide those changing of the language, the pronouns, and inviting them to the table will be key. So thank you.
I completely agree with you, Daryle. And I hope that you see that's what we're trying to do here with this conference and with this kind of a session, is that, we are trying to genuinely and sincerely bring a youth voice and start our conference off with a youth voice that really is addressing what is of concern to you and what solutions you all see and suggest. And so that's what we're trying to do here. And I'm a proponent of, so I feel like for far too long, we as Native people have been asking for a seat at the table, whatever the table is, right? And I'm to the point where it's like, come to our table, come sit at our table. So us, the youth here, me with you, we have our table, and we've invited these 200 people that are watching us to your table. So this is your table. I appreciate that, you are sharing it with everyone else, and that you guys get to talk about what you want to talk about. This is kind of an unconventional panel and situation for a conference like this, but I really like it. I hope other people like it, but I really like it. And so I appreciate you guys. Rebekah, let's go to you and see, share with us what's going on with your people and your community, challenges or strengths there.
Okay. So I also come from two communities. My current community is Huna, and there is a lot of matriarchal women and a lot of singing and dancing that happens in Southeast Alaska, and a lot of basketball. Like, we've had basketball legends in Southeast Alaska that, like, every single year we have a tournament and all of Juneau comes together, and this year they weren't able to do that. And so as a tribal community, gatherings is, one of the biggest things that can bring us together, where we're able to learn about each other and talk about what makes us similar, what makes us different. Those are strengths that I feel that are in Southeast Alaska, this community that I live in. Everyone in Southeast Alaska is related, just like everyone in their region. We're all related, And as for my Yupik family up north in Hooper Bay, our another one of our community strengths is basketball. We really, we all really identify with basketball, but I think that's because long ago, we had some issues with each other, but the elders say that we don't speak about that anymore, like with the fights and stuff, because we want to move forward. So we like replace those battles with basketball and other gatherings, other fun gatherings that are not wars, but still we get to compete. And those are some of the greatest strengths in our community, is competing and having fun and testing our limits. And those are some great challenges, because we don't get to test our limits this year. You know, we have to stay in. And another thing, one of the greatest challenges, I don't know, somebody said it at the beginning of this conference, like, or maybe I heard it this morning when I was listening to something, that our people made a lot of sacrifices to get to where we are today. And, you know, and that is a lot of learning, and they had to do a lot of unlearning. And I feel like that is what we're here doing. We are learning and we're unlearning ways, because that's the only way that we're going to overcome, is if we sacrifice what, I don't know, what we love. And maybe it's like our pride, or maybe it's our, I don't know, maybe it's not us, maybe it's other people sacrificing and unlearning too. You know, I know that we have been wanting a seat at the table, and Tasha, you're right. Now people want to come to our table because our elders and our grandparents have had the answers to the land and to how things are spiritually. And we have to get back to those elders and those answers that they hold. And we can only do that by asking, learning and unlearning, and practicing that every day.
Thank you, Rebekah. I appreciate you acknowledging the elders in our communities as strengths. I think we've all seen through the pandemic that we're still in, that we've done everything we can to try to protect our elders, because they are the treasures of our community, and they hold a lot of keys to knowledge and healing and all of the resources that we need. And they need us as well, right? We need the youth voice. That's why we've included this today. And the other piece that I like, I think we can all agree that sports is probably a protective factor in Native communities. That competition that you're talking about, where they're traditional sports or, you know, more contemporary sports. And we've seen the impacts of youth not being able to do those things, like you said, your traditional games and competitions. And how can we incorporate those in the programming that we do, and then also tie those back to culture, right? So maybe if those competitions go back to traditional wars or feuds, like, let's teach the history of that and instill that part of the identity and the understanding of who we are, and still participate and have a good time and be competitive. So I can see where those things would tie into the work that we all do. And I think the other piece of when I'm saying that, and I'm just hearing myself say that, is, you know, we're doing the work as the adult practitioners, but again, it goes back to community, like Rory was talking about. We're all doing the work. The youth are going to be doing the work. The adults who are creating the programs and facilitating, they're going to be doing the work. We all have to work together to help the youth in our communities. Rory, did you want to share about your community?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm able to see my community very unique perspective that a lot of people don't get to see it as. So, as I said, I started volunteering when I was, and you know, become a real young community organizer, and I was 12 or 13. So, with that, I was able to gain a lot of trust from our community. You know, there's not too many young people like me that were so, you know, wanting to get involved and help out wherever they can. But it still let me. I got a lot of trust from our community members, and with that, you know, and seeing it from different viewpoints and whatnot has really shaped my life, as well as me being a volunteer firefighter, emergency medical technician, and for a time I was elected law enforcement officer. Yeah, so I've seen my community a very unique point, and those help shape my experiences to be a better advocate, for those that go without. I always think that I always think that I'm really lucky that I've been able to do a lot of these things. Being involved in tribal government, I was able to meet people from across the country and those within my nation that really took me under their wing. But there's so many youth that go without, and so what has been probably what gets me out of bed every day, or what drives me to continue on with this work. It's a struggle. I'm in my senior year at college and getting ready to study for the LSAT to go to law school and whatever may come after that. But it's all about just being the person that I think I needed when I was 12 and I was 13, because like I said, a lot of youth go without. And I think that's what contributes to a lot of our delinquency that we see in young people in my community. Is there's not anything for them to do. There's no really caring individuals that really will take the time out to really work with our youth. Because that's there's a lot of my friends that went down the dark road and really haven't found their spot yet, but they're trying though. But so that's why I think I'm in a point now where I can step up and be one of those people for those up and coming, because I'm gonna need somebody to take my spot here pretty quickly. But just setting the next person up for success is what I try to do. And when I meet with young people in my community, that's all I know. It's always, I always try to put myself in their shoes and try to be there for one another. As like I said, that's what usually drives me and what's my identity is, doing the best I can do hopefully to help somebody else.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Rory. And I think that's a perfect segue into our next slide, because you mentioned peers and really being there for them, setting an example and those kinds of things. So I know we've talked a lot about and what your experience was as an individual, but really thinking broadly about your peer groups. That's kind of what this slide is. And by no means do we expect you to speak for an entire generation, but I know that you all are very smart and in touch with your peers. So what are the kind of the trending issues, if you will, for lack of a better term? So what is the greatest issue facing you and your peers? And how do you think the COVID-19 global pandemic will continue to affect people in your age group? So we'll just do both of those. And let's start with Daryle.
Yeah, I guess the greatest issue I know facing my peers as a young adult is being able to, and I don't mean this in a mean way, as professionals and working into the field that I am, is taking my personal hat off and taking my personal opinion away from the situation and including what my thoughts and what it really should be when I'm not living that. It's the young people that are living. It's their decision. And so we're almost given a way of being able to factor in nothing about us without us. And so that's my greatest fear right now, working with young people in my age right now. And also my some of our bosses who don't get that decisions you're making right now are going to trickle down. And so how do we make sure, without offending, or maybe it is a coming to realization conversation, to say the decisions we're making are not based on my experience. It should be based on that. So we bring the young people in. And the follow-up with that second question is mental health is huge. It's already affecting our communities right now. On top of that, in Pine Ridge, you have a top suicide that's historically been there for our young people. And you put the pandemic on that. It's crazy to think that we have 2 or 3 people going around that are unpaid in Pine Ridge doing mental health checks with our young people when they reach out. 2, 3 people that truly are unpaid or unfunded right now because they're deciding to do that because this is what is their community. This is who they are on this reservation. Looking in from out, we need to look at that and see moving forward where we can shift our dollars, or how can we make sure that mental health is going to be a key aspect for the next 3 years. When you look at working, when you look at situations, when we look at administrations, And so the last 4 years, what has done to our mental health is now affecting these next 4 years. And so how do we make sure we work for the next 7 years as our 7 generations are moving forward to making sure that in our community that we are making sure mental health is a key aspect for our young people that have experienced this and will be experiencing it. And finally, don't let this be a challenge. Just ask the young people to come in, incentivize, $25 gift card or something to be able to say, hey, we value your voice and how do we make sure when you come in? And my peers that are out there that are young adults in this profession, don't be scared. It's okay to ask young people to the table. It's okay to have conversations with them because you're going to come up with the most brilliant ideas from our young people who are willing to share. Like Devin said, this is her first time at this an issue like this, to be able to voice and be able to be heard. So let's hear it. Let's provide action after that and making sure that we're following up with those.
Thank you, Daryle. I think you really get it, and I hope that these practitioners are listening, right? I appreciate them taking the time, and I hope they're hearing because everyone's speaking from their heart and their spirit today. And so I think there's something to be said for that, and hopefully our hearts and spirits are open to what you guys are sharing. Let's go to Devin. Devin, if you would like to share, he touched on Pine Ridge. What's the greatest issue facing you and your peers on Pine Ridge? And then how do you think COVID-19 will continue to affect people in your age group?
It's sad to say, but the biggest thing the biggest issue my peers face is their mental health. Because of COVID, we have had more and more suicides. And as you may not know, Pine Ridge has one of the most highest suicide rates for reservations or in this nation at all. I can think about from June to September of last year, in my circle, there were about 7 suicides that touched my community and hurt. Whoa, I'm so sorry for this wind. That all hurt us deeply. I think our biggest thing is that we need coping mechanisms. Right now we have sports, but with the COVID-19 pandemic and quarantine, our sports were taken away. We cannot express ourselves through sports anymore. But that is kind of all we have here. We don't have any art programs. We don't have any literature programs. We don't have any reading programs, anything that uplifts, anything that isn't sports. So these kids who can't play basketball or they struggle with basketball, they turn to isolation, they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, and then it leads them down the road to suicide. And that is our biggest issue.
Thank you, Devin. Yeah, I mean, that's really impactful. And I hope people hear what you said. I mean, in such a short period of time that your circle was impacted by 7 suicides is huge. And, there have to be ways that we can address that better as communities and for and with our youth. And I know, we've only had 2 of you respond to this, and both of you have said mental health is the biggest issue facing you and your peers right now. And then Devin, you spoke to coping mechanisms, and that if sports is the only thing that people are focusing on, and we take that away because of COVID-19, what resources have we left the youth with? I know for a lot of the grantees that we serve, they did start to do, take home packets and different art projects and beading projects and the things that you were talking about, and they were sending them out to help youth redirect and all of those things. So what I'm hearing from both of you is that we just need to develop more response to mental health and how that leads people into, the juvenile justice system and all of those things that we're focused on. So, of course, there's no easy answer, and every community is unique, but it seems like, at least with the first two, that the mental health is something we really need to focus more time and resources on for our youth, because you're asking for it. Kennedy, what about you? What is the greatest issue facing you and your peers?
I think mental health as well, I'm just going to touch briefly on it because they said some really good things. I've personally been affected by COVID-19 with my mental health, just struggling, feeling alone and feeling like nobody's there for you. Even if, you have your family and stuff around you, you just feel so alone. And it's kind of a scary time for kids because nobody's really been through a global pandemic before. And so it's just scary because, what could happen next? What if your parent loses a job, you're not able to, pay your bills, be able to eat, it's just a big worry on all kids. It's stressful on them, even if, their parents don't talk to them about this stuff. It's still stressful just watching the news, seeing, even influencers on the internet talking about it and talking about issues like that. It's just scary to kids now. And I think facing peers, I personally don't face this, but it's just addiction, with drugs and alcohol, not even due to the pandemic, just through everything, it's the only thing they can go to. And that's the only thing I think will fix it. And in the end, it doesn't fix it. It will end in suicide. It will end in harm and hurt. And it's not, I think they're not educated enough. Like, of course there's programs, but it's educating parents as well, parental figures or just caretakers in the house, how to deal with people's mental health, how to deal with kids going through addiction and, or teenage pregnancy and stuff like that. It's just training the people at home and even training the kids themselves, how to deal with it, how to cope, like Devin had said, coping mechanisms other than just sports and stuff like that, teaching kids how to bead, how to life skills, like life skill classes, that'll take your mind off of it. And it's just, I know I'm on the younger side of, I am the younger side of all the panelists. And, I think letting them get their voice out, express how they're feeling and expressing, not just from us, even if they have just a little box, where teens can write down their issues or their thoughts, like it's called the government, like the tribal government. And if they just had like a box, teens could write down, suggestions of like programs or stuff like that and their feelings and the help that they need, just providing outlets for teens and young youth to just talk about themselves and talk about the issues going on and even COVID.
Thank you, Kennedy. I think one point that you made, and I don't even know if you made it, but is really you touched on healing the whole family and addressing the whole family. So we can't just say we're fixing youth, right? We're healing youth, but incorporating the whole family, and whether that's an extended family or the community at large, how are we equipping everybody to be helpful to the youth? So I really appreciate that you said that. And I think it's important to do that. And I like the idea. I mean, those kinds of solutions that you mentioned with the box, I mean, those are simple. Those don't cost much. It doesn't really cost anything but time and someone to listen and read those and take those in and see how they can incorporate that into the programs they're running or the help that they're offering, the resources they're offering. So thank you for sharing that. I think we have such great conversation. We're running a little short on time. So I think we're going to combine the next two and next two slides. The next one was the youth discussion. I still do want to allow you guys to say a few words if there's something that you hadn't touched on. I know what in our conversation and prepping for this session, we talked about pandemic, which you guys have touched on. Sports, which you guys have touched on, the Two-Spirit community, and mental health were some things that you all brought up as panelists, but I feel like we touched on most of those. Is there anything else that you want to share in reference to those or something else? And then feel free to ask each other questions. We can probably do this for maybe about 5 minutes, and then we'll go to audience questions.
I have a question for my other panelists. I guess we have to keep it as short as we can, but something that has really affected me as an Indigenous youth is historical trauma. How has historical trauma impacted you, and how does it still impact you?
Thank
So
you,
I can
Devin.
start out. Oh. I'll answer this. Take a shot at this. So for me, I guess just recognizing that it's there, recognizing that it's there, it's within us, it's embedded with who we are, and not just us, our parents, our grandparents. Recognizing that really helped me look at why things are the way that they are, why that everything that may have happened to me doesn't happen because of me. It's happened because there's been a long cycle of oppression, wrongdoings towards our people. You know, mine could be directly came from the boarding school era. You know, my grandmother was taken to boarding school at a very young age and really didn't and came out of it and really didn't really know how to raise a family, basically, if we want to get down to it. But she did her best and was able to raise 5 children, most of which went on to earn their education. And you know, my mother was the first one to go to school in her family, first one a bachelor's degree, first one to get a graduate degree, and really set that example that she and she inspires me every day. They all do, for my mom and my grandma, that they're able to embody resilience, they're embody that you can't have it all. You know, it might not be at the same time, but you can't have it all. There's that growing recognition that, and then also I have a duty on me to recognize it, educate my peers and those in the community that don't know that it's not always us, that, you know, why we feel the way we do, and it's because of what's happened to our people. But it's our duty now to recognize it, educate, and not pass it on to our future generations. You know, we need to do what we can to destroy historical trauma. And you know, my way has been the way that my mom used it, was using education. It was a tool that was used to oppress us. Now we're using it as a tool to help us, help our people. And that's what I want to continue to do throughout my educational journey. There's going to be a lot of long nights and long sleepless nights as I get ready to go to law school and ready to graduate here, but it's all going to be worth it. It's all going to be a service to our people.
Can I touch on it right quick? Do we have time?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, historical trauma is it's in our DNA. It's the historical strength of like our ancestors, you know, and we're here and we'll always be here. We're the OGs of this land. And so it's like, you know, we're always gonna be here. And it doesn't matter, you know, if somebody's being hateful or anything like that. We're always gonna be here. Even if, you know, or even at that, you know, there's people passing on, you know, culture and spirituality and, you know, languages and cultures of all different types of tribes. So it's just going to continue, you know, it may fizzle out for a little bit, but it's always going to be there. There's always going to be, you know, multiple tribes all across America. You know, there's always going to be Native people on this land.
Thank you, Kennedy. I think I will now always refer to myself as an OG of this land. So I like that. Maybe put on a t-shirt. But I get what you're saying, right? So we have historical trauma, but we also have that historical strength in our DNA. So I think you're absolutely right. And we will always be here. And I think each of you is a representation for your regions, for your nations, for your ancestors, for your future generations, that we will always be here and that we have so much strength that exists in our communities in you. And we have so much hope and faith in you, and that, you know, you do have peers that are struggling, right? That aren't sitting on this panel, that probably have a ton to share with us as well, but no one has helped them find their voice yet. So we appreciate you all being the voice for them when they can't speak. And you have a whole community here that is supporting you virtually and moving forward. So now let's go ahead and move to the audience question and answer. I think we'll just go past this youth discussion into the next slide, and let's see what the audience has to ask the youth, and feel free to ask them if there's something that we haven't touched on. And I think Kathleen is going to field those questions for us.
I wrote some down, Chukshi. Thank you so much, Takoja's grandchildren, for your presentation. I really appreciate it. Here's a question. In what ways can we get youth to talk? Many of our youth in our tribal community are shy and don't feel comfortable talking. And a related question is, how do we reach youth who are not engaging?
I'd like to answer this. Recently, my tribal government held like kind of like a council meeting just for hearing out youth. It was very emotional and it was very heavy, but there were things that needed to be talked about. I think one of the ways we could do that is that if we start small, maybe start in schools and then maybe go bigger, like have those meetings with your tribal officials, talk about what you really feel, what needs to be said, because like as Tasha said earlier, there are people who aren't on this panel who I know have things they need to be put out, and I will do my best to try to represent that for them, but I can't hold like everything they say on my shoulders. So I think that it's part of the tribal government's responsibilities to listen to the youth through meetings, or whether it's like have like a website forum for it, maybe it's anonymous, something like that.
I think to add on to Devin's point, kind of going back to my box idea, just having somewhere, where your youth can tell you what's wrong, and they don't have to have like a face. They don't have to put your face or label onto what's their issues and stuff. And so at the same time, if your youth are struggling, because youth will always be struggling, but if your youth are struggling and they won't come to you, then go to your youth. And that's just starting out small, kind of like Devin said, to schools or just, communities like homes. You could just set up a tent and all the kids can come to that tent, in the community. And so it's like, you have to engage if they're not going to engage.
I'd like to say that, you kind of have to build a relationship in order to get youth to talk to you. It's hard to talk about the things that are happening at home for some kids. For me, I'm older now and I can speak on what happened to me as a kid, because I don't want that to happen to my child. My mom was like drunk all the time and doing drugs, and that's not easy to say. It's not even easy to talk to your mom at any point. So whenever a stranger comes up to you and asks you what's going on in your community, it's not easy as a young person to build that trust or to understand that these people are here to help you, or that you can be trusted. Like, it's not your fault at all. It's like we're still learning about how to break the cycle and trust within, and there's a lot happening. So it's just a small steps, like Devin and Kennedy said, very small steps with showing that you care, or asking them questions about how their day went. It's really, really small things like that. Greeting them when they come in the door, learning their names, talking to them, getting on their level, because you can't expect them to be on your level because they don't even know what level to be at. They're just trying to be. We're just trying to be, and that would be a good way to help break the ice.
Thank you, Rebekah. And we are running short on time. I apologize. I think we could talk to you guys forever, because it's so meaningful, everything that you have to say. Is there another question or?
More questions. There's a lot of interest in what you're saying, but I guess just one more question. Somebody wants to know how they can connect with the Native American side of them, being pale, green-eyed, red-haired, and that was their question. How do I connect with the Native American side of me?
Yeah,
I can,
interesting. Yeah, if you could do it just real briefly. Sorry.
I would say that, you know, learning about what's happening in communities and speaking out about what's going on, and just asking questions and reading books, and always learning about what's happening around us. So.
And always
Awesome.
knowing, sorry. Can I go?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
It's
Go ahead.
brief. It's just real brief. It's just always knowing you're Native. You know, you may not look the most Native, you may not act the most Native, but you know in your heart that you're Native.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. Let's go ahead to the next slide. And so we had youth recommendations here, but I feel like you guys have been making recommendations throughout on how adult practitioners can approach the work and things we can do better. Even in the last question, saying start small and go bigger, in listening to youth voice and how to engage. So I feel like we've touched on a lot of that already. So I do want to leave enough time for Rebekah to close us out. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. This is our team here at the Tribal Youth Resource Center. We work in conjunction with our partners at the National Native Children's Trauma Center. And so we are always envisioning a future where Indigenous youth thrive through traditional lifeways. And all of you are thriving right now. I know sometimes it might not feel like it, but you guys are amazing. I had to hold back tears through much of this presentation because you just give me so much hope, and reinvigorated my fire for this work. Next slide.
Thank you for attending session A1, the Youth Voice Panel. As a reminder, there's a link for a workshop session evaluation in the chat box. Please click on this link now and take a moment to complete the survey. There's also a sign that links to session evaluations in the main virtual lobby. Your feedback is greatly appreciated, and the session recordings will be posted on this platform and will remain up until April 30th. After this time, you may find recordings of all conference sessions at tribalyouth.org. Thank you.
Thank you.